You're listening to the No Schedule Man podcast with Kevin Bulmer, exploring real stories and lessons learned with a variety of special guests. To learn more about Kevin and to access other episodes of the podcast, please visit noscheduleman.com and connect and contribute at No Schedule Man on Twitter or Instagram and on Facebook, YouTube, and SoundCloud, all /No Schedule Man. Thanks for listening and enjoy the No Schedule Man podcast.
I've been known to struggle with reality. Not that it is any real mystery. I just don't.
Hi, I'm Kevin Bulmer. Thank you for being here. I hope you enjoy the show. If you do, please do take a moment to subscribe and share it with someone you know. Sign up to my email list. You can find that at noscheduleman.com. And don't be a stranger. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to know what you like about the show, what areas you think could maybe be improved, what you'd like to hear more of, less of. Would always appreciate the feedback. And thank you so much to those who have sent their very kind words of support and those who have taken the time to rate and review the show on iTunes. That helps a lot, and I'm grateful. Today, we're exploring the journey of Laurie Hawkins. Laurie is a certified business coach. She's a success strategist, a speaker, facilitator, and founder of Hawk Inspired. She inspires business leaders and teams toward peak performance and achievement and has walked an interesting path, as most people on this podcast have. They're here for a reason. It's been an interesting path, both personally and professionally, to get to where she is today, and I think that you're going to find her story really, really interesting. Along the way, Laurie has assembled a really rich list of credentials. I won't list them all, but a few of them that kind of stood out to me. She's achieved a leadership certificate from the Ivy School of Business. She's been the recipient of the Leaders Circle Sales Award for top sales nationally here in Canada. She's been the recipient of 10 years of President's Club Awards for overachievement of sales. She's a certified Lumina learning practitioner, a human synergistics accredited practitioner, and she's a Focal Point certified business, a Focal Point certified business success coach, among many, many other credentials. You can see the complete list at hawkinspired.com if you click on Laurie's bio. The more I do this podcast, the more I am convinced that I want to keep doing it. And I was really struck by the conversation with Laurie about how just as soon as I think I know what someone's going to say, they say something different. And Laurie did that right out of the gates with the very first question. She didn't answer it how I thought she was going to. The lesson in that for me is listen. You listen and pay attention, because no two stories are exactly the same. No two experiences are completely alike, and no two people are exactly the same. We all have something unique to be able to offer to each other, and that's what I find to be the real gift of the time that people like Laurie give to me, and as an extension to you, to really openly and authentically share their experiences, what's worked, what hasn't. And I'm really quite touched and exceptionally grateful that people like Laurie are willing to share their time with me and with you, and to also open up and be so honest and authentic, because I'm coming to find out that's where I think the real human connection comes in, and that's a theme, human connection, that comes up a lot. Something else that really stuck with me from my time with Laurie was the idea of the power of influence that we're having on the people around us, and our views of the world, how those are shaped by those relationships and that influence. And of particular note, I mentioned that, I think, wrapped around the context of the relationship that she describes that she had with her father. And she's going to get into that pretty much right off the start of our discussion. But it's something that, as I'm continuing to learn, I'm keeping in mind on two different levels, and one weighs a little bit heavier than the other. I'll do the lightest one first, and that's just the people that are around me. I think I can see now that I had and have far more influence on the people immediately around me than I ever imagined that I did, that I am probably sending out signals. Some of them say stress and anxiousness, and other days, and I'm trying to make it more days than not, those signals send out cheerfulness and support and positivity and encouragement. And that's certainly what I want to be able to bring to the world and to the people that are around me. But I'm only just now, 43 years into this journey, really starting to kind of tune in about just how much we affect other people, sometimes without even saying a thing. That we can just pick up on the vibes of other people, even if we don't know that that's what we're doing. So that's one area for me. And the other one, and I really thought about this a lot. I have been thinking about this and really thought about it a lot after talking with Laurie, but that's the relationship that I have with my kids. That once I've found that since I've tuned into the awareness of how my kids respond to what I say or do, I'm amazed at how much influence I have over them without even trying to. And it's actually a little bit frightening if you want me to be completely honest. But I mention that as something that I think is worth keeping in mind. And I offer that respectfully, both in terms of trying to be aware of what influence you're having on other people. Are you bringing them down, or are you propping them up? Are you empowering them and boosting them and pushing them ahead? Think about that, because you might not always be doing the one that you think that you're doing. You might even just be, quote, blowing off steam. But even when you're doing that, you may be dumping toxic emotions and building limiting beliefs to the people that you care about the most. Just a suggestion, something to consider. That goes the same the other way around also. To be a little bit more aware of what effect the other people, up to and including some of the people that you like and love the most, are having on you. And that is sometimes a really difficult lesson to consider, and maybe even more so to act upon when you realize, wait a minute, I love this person, but they're just constantly dumping off excess negative energy and emotional sludge on me. And you've got some choices when you face that fork in the road of what you want to do about that. But the first step is awareness. And that's something I thought about a lot in the time since I talked with Laurie, and I really thank her for turning my attention to that. Some of the key takeaways I got from this conversation with Laurie Hawkins that I'll encourage you to listen to include, along the lines of what I was just saying, number one, guiding versus telling. She gives some great examples about how her father did this for her. It's the difference between mentoring and just, I'm searching for the word, directing, but guiding someone and helping them to understand and empowering them with information as opposed to just telling them, do this, don't do that. It's a world of difference. And I'll not say anything more on it than that, other than listen for what Laurie has to share about it, because I thought it was really, really terrific. Number two, service and authenticity. Now, the more of these podcast episodes I do, the more I'm absolutely convinced that these are two essential elements for success in life in any form. Service, what you can give to others, and authenticity. If you're showing up in the world being yourself. So many of us, including yours truly, have been afraid to do that or are afraid to do that. And it's a dialogue, so you know, that I have with myself in bits and pieces every single day. Kev, be yourself. Be authentic. Don't be ignorant. Still have a filter, but be you. You're the only one of you that there is, and that's your unique gift. Be that person. You don't need to be like everybody else. And as far as service and sharing and giving, boy, this keeps coming up over and over and over again as well. And I'll put it in this context. For a long time, when I would hear somebody talk about giving and sharing, I would think, well, they mean money. I'm supposed to give money. And I didn't always have a whole lot of money to give, or so I'd say. So I wouldn't have anything to give. Well, sometimes it's not about that. In fact, I would suggest most times it's not about that. Along the lines of human connection, which I'm going to get to in just a moment, with what you give, probably the most valuable thing that you can give to somebody is your time and your attention and listening genuinely and giving your encouragement and support and just your spirit and time in terms of volunteering and all sorts of things that you can give that don't necessarily involve money, but giving and contribution comes up in this conversation with Laurie, and I think it's important to note, and I encourage you to listen for it. Number three, I've mentioned this phrase already a couple of times, human connection. We talk about, Laurie and I, processes and, sales lines, tricks, closing techniques, things like that, and we have a little bit of a laugh at the expense of those kinds of things. But we also talked about human connection as it relates to her travels, or as it relates to the telephone, what used to be a thriving telecom industry, of which Laurie was a key part for many years, and that's since kind of come and gone. Now a phone represents something different to us. But all of that, sales processes, who you meet in your travels and what they respond to, technology that comes and goes, the commonality in all of that, as the technologies and trends change, the one thing that never does is that humans want connection. So with where I set out on this point about processes, lines, tricks, closing techniques, because Laurie has spent much of her career in sales and coaches people and things related to that and helps businesses related to that. But it's not about some trick. It's about being authentic. It's about service. It's about guiding versus telling. It's about the human connection. As Laurie put it, quote, people are aching for connection. And I completely agree with her. And she offers that by sharing her time and her story with you and me. I know you're going to enjoy it. Here's the conversation with Laurie Hawkins on the No Schedule Man podcast. Laurie, around what time did you discover that sales was going to be part of your path forward?
That's a great question. I would say in my childhood, because even as a young child, my father, who was an executive with an agriculture company, said, if you know sales and understand how to build relationships and connect with people, then you can make anything happen in your life. And so at the age of 12, we had to come up with our own little business idea and how we would actually sell the product. So I grew cucumbers and sold them to the local cannery. And then I baked pies and sold them to the local campground. And he would put me in the truck and take me off to the campground. And for him, it was, if you can learn that skill and connect, and it's all about connecting with people, really.
What did your dad do?
He was the president of Stauffer Chemicals at the time, which is long gone. Now would be Syngenta. So he was in the agriculture field.
That's really interesting. It's not what I was expecting you to say. That's why I love doing this, because you think you know the answer. And this is the whole thing about life, is we think we know about other people, and we don't know.
Oh, I'm a farm girl. So we had 7 farms growing up. We had beef cattle, cash crop, but my dad was rarely home because he was the president of a fairly significant company at the time. So he traveled a lot and was around North America doing his thing. So
what is your thought about what other people's perception is? And when I say other people, I'm being horrifically general in my sweeping statement. But when they think of sales or to be a salesperson, what your thought is of what their perception is of that?
Well, I think, unfortunately, and it really hurts my heart, to be honest, is still that used car person perception.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, even at the age of 12, which is now 40 some odd years ago, no, 30 some, I don't know, do the math.
You don't need to be
a while
any more
ago.
Revealing than you.
That wasn't what I was taught at a young age. It was about connecting. It was about relationships. It was about listening. It was about understanding what people's needs are. And yet still today, the perception is used car.
I had the idea of that Willie Loman character, downtrodden, trench coat, walking through the rain, knocking on someone's door, trying to trick them into buying something that they didn't need.
Yes.
And found out quite by accident that it's much different, similar to what you just described.
Yeah, it's really just a deep human connection. So
this is something that was a fundamental part of you growing up all through your fundamental years. Fundamental years? You know what I mean. I hope so. What's he talking about? Like, from childhood, teenage, becoming an adult, it's not something that you arrived at after the fact and thought, okay, well, I guess I'll go into sales. Because that's what happened to me. Your story is different, clearly.
Well, even once I graduated from university, I actually was in the hospitality industry, and my hope was that I would run a big hotel one day. And again, it was that advice from my dad is, go get a sales job, because what you'll learn in that will lead to whatever you want it to lead to. Because if you can do well in sales, you can lead people, you can do whatever you want in your career. And so that was the path I went on. So my first job was actually the first female sales rep ever in the wood products industry in Canada.
Wood products.
Wood products.
Can you... No, you know what? We're going to come back to that.
Okay.
Before we get to that along the line, I'm interested in what was it about you and the relationship that you had with your dad that instinctually told you to listen to him and buy into that wisdom even as that young a person?
He's just an amazing mentor and always has been. He's probably genuinely, and anyone you talk to that knows him would say, the best human you could ever meet. He cares deeply about people. He wants everyone to create their happiness. He's a friend. He's a mentor. He listens. He guides. He doesn't tell. Even as children, we weren't told what to do. We were guided. And it's funny looking back, it was all the accountability piece. Well, who do you want to be and what do you want to create? And, well, how would you do that? Like, he was just a natural coach.
You just started answering what I was going to ask next, which is to go a little bit deeper in guiding versus telling and what's the difference between the two.
And really, it's that listening and asking questions and then pulling it out of you, which is what he did. He never sat down and said, this is what you should do. It was always, what do you think? What's going on inside your brain? What are you feeling about that? Always from being a little child. Yeah.
Where did he get that from?
That's a good question. I don't know, because his parents are interesting. My grandparents were not... my dad has a really cool story. So he grew up on a farm and in southwestern Ontario, and his dad really suffered from alcoholism. Not really the greatest man, to be quite honest. His mom, heart of gold. My grandma was an amazing human. Her birthday was yesterday, and but not highly intelligent. Just a simple farm wife, really. And my dad actually ran away from home to go get his university education. And he was disowned from his father for those first few years when he made that choice. And he was an only child, and he just had good mentors in his life that believed in him, that kept sort of coaching him, that he had more, he could do more. There was more there for him. And I just think that's remarkable. Like, I can't imagine doing that.
What a massive act of courage.
Huge.
Wow.
Huge. Yeah. Run away from the farm and go get a university education.
How do you even trust yourself to know what a good mentor is when you're in that kind of an environment?
I think that's one thing about the community of agriculture in the past. I don't think it's as much like that today, but you weren't raised by your family. You were raised by the community. Even when I was growing up, you were part of the community. So everyone's children on that line that you grew up on was everyone's responsibility. And so that's how they treated him. He was a part of everyone's families. And so a couple of neighbors just happened to believe in education, knew he was a bright kid, took him under his wing and helped guide him.
You can say whatever you want, or you can call yourself whatever you want to call yourself, but you can't change fundamentally. Well, you can change who you are, but at sort of an energetic level, I don't think that you can fool with reality. Absolutely. And I'm guessing that even as a young girl, you must have just been able to pick up on that from your dad without even really knowing that that's what you were doing.
Yeah, absolutely. There's just a feeling, right? There's just a knowing of being in someone's presence like that. I think it's just, my dad has this incredible faith and trust, which obviously guided him as a young boy to make those choices too, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think having the ability to grow up in that was pretty incredible. And I think I say to my kids all the time, I mean, he changed the trajectory of his entire family moving forward by that choice. Yeah. Because we wouldn't be who we are. My kids wouldn't be who they are. Like, it's pretty incredible.
I'll tell you why I keep asking about this and want to explore it further is that I have two great parents, and they were and are very loving and nurturing, and my dad had all kinds of advice that I can look back now that I can see was good, solid advice, but I wasn't necessarily prone to listen to him. Right. And I wasn't a troublemaker. Mm-hmm. It just didn't connect.
Resonate. Yep.
Yeah. And so now that I'm a dad on my own, it's something I think about a lot. So when I come across somebody like you that really got some of those good solid principles under her belt right from the start, it seems to me to be evidence of how powerful that can be when we as parents and influencers and other people in the community, we don't necessarily understand the power of influence that we can have, good or bad, knowing or unknowing, around other people, especially our children, and you're evidence of that.
Well, and I think, though, being able to look back is always different than being in the moment.
Sure.
Right? So, I mean, now at almost 50, I can look back and go, wow. But in that moment, I'm sure I didn't always listen to every piece of advice. In fact, I know I didn't. And, but yeah, there's just something, I can't, I'm so blessed to have had an amazing mentor in him, for sure. And still to this day.
Aside then from selling cucumbers and pies, you said, right? It wasn't cucumber pie, though,
no,
was it?
It wasn't.
That I've never heard of.
No, that would not be good.
No, I was just going to say, we could patent it.
Yeah, we could.
But that would be
I don't think it'd work.
A pretty niche market, I think. Aside from those things, and as you develop those interests, I mean, just as a kid and then even going into your teenage years, what were some of the other things that made up Laurie Hawkins? What interested you, and what were some of the things that you thought that were going to be a part of your story going forward?
Well, again, I think because of my dad's career, we had the opportunity to travel quite a bit as teenagers. So I loved travel, loved to experience other cultures and people and what was unique about that. And hence, that was my whole, I'm going to go into hospitality. I loved to serve people. I loved community. As a child, I was a girl guide and traveled the world with guides. Reached the highest level there. I also did what was called the Gold Duke of Edinburgh Award. So I actually received the award from Prince Philip, and actually 3, Prince Edward, Prince Philip, and Prince Charles. I had 3 levels, and that was all about serving your community. So I would say those are kind of the things that make up who I am, that started at a young age.
That's not how I thought you were going to answer the question. Community service and things like that. I thought that you might say, I don't know, going to the drive-in.
No.
That's lame. I couldn't think of anything else, but.
No, we didn't do that. I mean, obviously friends and just, I would say experience, right? Like even to this day, I'm a huge experience person. So whatever that looks like, whether it's connecting friends or it's traveling to a different country or it's doing something crazy for a special event for the kids, I love to just create experiences, which started way back then.
What were some of the places that you traveled to that were of particular influence to you?
Oh, wow. So many. Not that, I mean, I still have so much travel left to do. Probably the biggest influence was when my daughter turned 19. We actually we have 4 kids, and when they graduate from grade 8, we have taken them all on a trip. But then when she graduated from grade 12, I wanted it to be something more meaningful. So we did a mission trip to Cambodia. And so we did Hong Kong, Indonesia, and then just her and I on our own went to Cambodia for a week and did some mission work. So that probably would be the most impactful and influential on both her and I on how we viewed the world and how fortunate we were.
What are some of the things that happened that made you come away with those thoughts?
Well, just seeing, I think for me, I understand at that depth that there's poverty and that there's, we're so fortunate in Canada to have what we have, that we have roofs over our heads and we have clothes and, fundamentally we get to eat every day kind of thing. And that's not for them. The big thing was that we were able to give them toothbrushes and they could brush their teeth, and that we could make bulletin boards for the classrooms so that they could actually write for the day, and that we could give them some money that day that they could have some slop, like it literally was slop for lunch, and they were so excited. So just seeing, I guess, the simple things. I think one of the things that we've realized from travel is that happiness, it absolutely does not come from money in any way, shape, or form. Happiness comes from that human connection. So you see them happy and thrilled that you're there, and it's nothing to do with anything they're getting. It's just that person to person, human to human, heart to heart experience. some of the poorest countries in the world are the happiest countries.
That seems to be a theme, the human experience and the connection that runs through everything that you've told me about your story so far. Starting, it sounds to me like with the relationship that you had with your dad. And I haven't sat in on one of your consultations, talks, but I'm guessing that there's some form of that in there when you're talking like about sales, about just the relationship and the human connection, as opposed to looking for the one line so that I can close that woman in white gloves to have a ketchup flavored popsicle or whatever the line is. All these ridiculous
cucumber
things.
Flavored popsicle.
Yeah, well, but then that might be sort of it's the color, I guess, more than the flavor that I was trying to get across. But kind of back to where we were a few minutes ago is, I guess it comes down to our view of ourselves and the world and labels that we want to put on things. And I'm trying to think about how to phrase, Laurie, like that, you are what you think you are, or, you get what you are, all those kinds of things, that how that translates into the arena that you're in now. And I appreciate we're jumping all around the landscape here. But if you can hang with me here just for a moment, that when you get in front of a group of business people, sales executives, to be able to help communicate that, we're all human and we're all sort of dependent upon each other. And in order for us to be successful, we kind of need each other. And it's much more about being, I'm guessing this is part of it, genuine and authentic than it is about coming up with the latest funnel, closing tactic, line, gesture, body language. Those things might be part of it, but the essence of it sounds to me is a lot more fundamentally human than that. Is that fair to say?
That's 100% accurate. Yeah. I think that it's part of the challenge, I believe, in sales, and why we're seeing such a huge challenge in most sales arenas today, is because there was that whole couple of decades of, let's come up with a system. Let's come up with a 5-step process to succeed in sales. Let's come up with some scripts. Because if we just give you and the next guy and the next guy and the next guy all the same scripts, then we'll be able to create success. But it takes the heart out. It takes the connection out. It takes the authenticity out. And I buy you. At the end of the day, I buy you. So, I think we're reaching a really interesting time in sales where none of that's working. I mean, all the companies I work with are coming to me and saying, everything we've done that's worked in the past isn't working. Why? Well, because people don't buy that way. And I think, if you watch the past sort of decade, people are aching for connection. People are aching for a real human to have a conversation with them. And even though they're buying a product or a service from you, they still want you to know them and what's important to them and what they need. So I always say it's like the synergy of your client's dreams with what your company needs to accomplish with who you are. And when you can pull all that together, then you have that synergistic sales experience.
Yeah, it's difficult to scale a system when it doesn't match your values.
Yes.
Because there's no way off that hamster wheel. You're always running, because sooner or later you're going to, it's much more transactional than relational, wouldn't you say?
Yes. Which doesn't create loyalty. So then you may have the sale in the moment, but do you have long-term sustainable success? Not usually.
Okay, I've jumped us way forward in the story here, but that's okay, because so much of it, we could talk about sales, talk about business, talk about our personalities, what beliefs we have, what stories we're telling ourselves. They're all labels that we put on whatever it is, and then we get to choose what we want to believe about those things or about those ideas. And it's interesting to me, the more people that I talk to through this, Laurie, how so many of those principles are the same, and they're obvious. They're right in front of us. And we just keep flailing about looking for the next new system or formula.
Next new system or formula.
Or exactly. 5 steps or whatever it is.
Yeah. I was fortunate, though, early in my career because I was in sales. So then I was in telecommunications, and I was working for Rogers. I was working for Sprint Canada, actually, at the time, long time ago, because they're not here any longer. And they were going to close the London office. So we really hadn't had a ton of sales success here. I had been number one in the country, only working, like I didn't run a system. I ran connection with people. And so I had been successful. The rest of our team was not. So literally it was, Laurie, I wanted a management opportunity. Sales to me was only a stepping stone so I could lead people. And so I applied for the management job here that was open. And they said, well, we'll give you the job, but just so you know, we're going to close the office because it's not successful. We don't need it there. You're not touching enough customers. A year later, we were the top sales team in the country. And there was no systems. It was just, and I say this today still, my customers come to me and say, we want sales processes, we want sales skills. And I say, okay, great. And then I go in and I work with the people and I help them believe in themselves, have the right mindset, understand how to connect at a deeper level, ask right questions, simple human things. And that's what changes it.
Where did that, I was going to say methodology, and I don't want that because that sounds like a system, but where did those ideas come from?
And it's funny because when I started my business, I didn't actually start with sales because I said, I don't have a system. I just do my thing. And I love people and I want to help people. I want to serve people. And so I've been able to succeed. So how do I go teach that? And so for the first 2 years of my business, I did no sales training, no sales coaching, no sales strategy, nothing. I just did business success. And then someone said, Laurie, what are you doing? Like, that's your gift. Are you crazy? But we don't see our own gifts, right? We have a hard time putting the mirror up and going, oh, wow, I actually do bring some value there, whereas others might not. So I started to trust myself a little bit more and realize that it's more the psychology of selling. So I really help people with the psychology of selling and connecting, and then create the success from there.
I want to go back and fill in some of the story that I jumped us into the DeLorean and looped us forward a couple of decades. My fault.
I like the DeLorean.
Do you?
Yeah.
There's one... you can't... sorry.
Oh, it's back there.
Yeah, there is a DeLorean sitting
That's
over there.
sweet.
Not an actual DeLorean, but a little die-cast representation from where we are, which is totally unfair to somebody listening. I can't see the DeLorean.
It's here.
Yeah,
Trust me.
Yeah, it's there. Diversion there. Stay on target, Kevin. I'm interested in hearing a little bit more about going through high school and post-secondary and into maybe even more so when your career started. You mentioned that you were interested in hospitality, but how did you pursue your education and how did that lead into what were the initial beginnings of your career?
So I went to University of Guelph and took my Bachelor of Commerce with a major in hotel and food. And like I said, I was going to run a big hotel. This is very entertaining.
Okay.
And I maybe shouldn't say this, but I had Donald Trump's photo on my desk because I wanted to go work in New York for Donald Trump. Now,
That's
I would not
tremendous.
want to work for him today. He was a little different then. He was more enchanting back then than he is today. Won't get into politics, but that was my dream, was to go work in New York City at a big hotel.
Why a hotel?
I don't know. I just loved the magic of all the people and serving again and creating those experiences, right? Like, it's all in one place that you can do that. So I did move out west and met my husband. Well, I met my husband and then moved out west and worked in restaurants out there for a few years, and then realized that although you could create the experiences, you weren't going to be financially sound, and it was going to be really hard to raise children in that environment. So I said, okay, I got to do something different, which is when I started in sales.
Pursuing the hotel dream?
Yeah, just hospitality in general is, I'm a hard worker. I have no problem working hard. Growing up on the farm, you learn that. But it's, long days. It's every day. It's every holiday. And if we do flash forward, my most important role in the world is being a mom. So I knew that I wanted to create some kind of career where I could have that balance of being an amazing mom and also have a solid career where I was successful. So
hospitality and hotel management, and to be more specific, that can be a real grind, can't it?
It's a grind, and it's not really a financially successful grind, for sure.
Yeah, I've had family members that have been in those roles, more the hotel chain level, that have just told me stories that
it takes a
make it sound
special
scary.
person. Yeah, it takes a special person, I think, to be able to do that for life.
Yeah. I wonder if there's still a little bit in the back of your mind somewhere about having, the Hawkins brand.
Oh, you could ask my husband.
Resort.
We talk about it all the time.
Do
It's
you?
the retreat center. So, I mean, I still have a huge passion for creating hospitality experiences. And one day, I hope, we've actually been looking for property that will have a little retreat center focused on the business, though. So that goes hand in hand somehow.
I can see something between a bed and breakfast and a resort.
Yeah.
That may or may not even be tied in with some coaching and...
Exactly. Yeah. It's in the dream.
Neat. Okay. Well, I'd love to talk more about that, but I want to get to... I almost jumped us off into another dimension again. We almost got up to 88 miles an hour. People that haven't seen that movie are like, what? Not really fair. Back to the Future if you need it. So let's go back to the past when you're having that realization about the career path that you had thought about and schooled yourself for might not fit all the criteria that you were envisioning for yourself at that time. What did that feel like? Because you're fairly early on to your professional story, and you're like, okay, well, I've invested all of this time and effort and education, and now I'm telling myself I want to take a diversion in the path.
Yeah, well, it depends how truly transparent we want to get right now. So it was, I will say, a challenging time for a whole bunch of different reasons. So I'd also only been married for a few years, moved out west, and marriage wasn't going well. Career wasn't what I thought it would be. And so made the choice to move back to Ontario. And so there was a whole bunch of sort of stuff going on at that point. It was one of those, which path are you going to choose? Which road are you going to follow? And so that was, at that time, I decided to go get a sales job and see what I could create with that, which was a fantastic decision because that took me right to where I am today. So new industry, new career, working with all men who really didn't want some young woman in there in the wood products industry. And I learned so much. And I had an amazing leader. Oh my gosh, Roy Turkstra. Yeah. Who just had this, he was in an industry where he didn't really fit because he was willing to try new things and, take a risk. And that was what connecting with him was all about, was learning how to sell different because he believed in different things than a traditional sales organization would believe.
I'm going to hold you here for a second because I'm talking to the 2017 version of Laurie Hawkins that has had time to process all this and look back. But what you described there sounded like a really challenging time in your life. Moving is one of the big stressors, let alone moving to an entirely different geography, not just sort of within the city, but across the country or somewhere else. Relationship challenges can be very difficult. I know about that firsthand. And then to deal with a career change all at the same time. What do you remember about the process of sorting through all of that to arrive at the decision of I'm going to go and try this, meaning the sales, because that's a tumultuous time. The snow globe's all shaken up and you're looking for clarity at the same time. How did you arrive at that decision? What did it feel like?
I think that, again, there's always just kind of been this uncanny trust in take a step forward and the path will unfold. So as much as there was stress, it certainly wasn't the biggest moment of stress in life. So it was just, you're young still, right? So you don't have debt. You don't have all this stuff going on at the time. It's just take a risk and see what happens would be more, I think, what was going through my mind at the time. And a hope that by doing that, things would start to move in a better direction relationally and in life in general.
And eventually they did?
No. So career-wise, absolutely. Like really good decision to go into a pure sales type of environment, learn a whole different industry, a whole different product. Relationally, I was married to my first husband for over 15 years. And so we stayed together a whole decade after that experience. And I would say it never really ever was a sound, positive experience. I'm married to my soulmate now. But that was everything happens for a reason. There was a whole lot of Laurie that needed to be created from having that marriage, for sure, and 2 beautiful children. However, it was tough.
Remember, I
because
told
I
you
believe in people, right? I'm going to save the world. I'm going to save him. I never saved him.
The people that are listening won't have heard this, but before you and I talked or hit record, and I was mentioning to you that we're just going to have a conversation, and you're going to share with me some things that I'm going to have 4 or 5 things that I hear in your response that I've got to choose which one to explore. So that's why that's why I'm pausing here. And I was almost 12 years married, and before we separated and then divorced, and she and I remain great friends. But when you look back with the benefit of hindsight, it seems plainly obvious where the diversion starts to come. But when you're in it, you don't see it, or you at least don't see it with that amount of clarity, or you think that you can fix it, but sometimes things aren't meant to be fixed. They just are what they are. And it's interesting how when we're in it, my words, not yours, that we tend to attach not a sense of worth or maybe success or failure based on, whether we can keep appearances up and what we think is a success or a failure by keeping things together, versus back to where we were a few minutes ago, when you can really kind of get in touch with what's right and what feels authentic for me, in your case for him. Even though it may be uncomfortable, we can explore that. It's authentic and true. How then the knots seem to untangle. Doesn't mean it's easy. Can be painful, but it does really open up a path forward. Was that your experience too?
Well, I think that the other thing that comes into play there is I have a strong spiritual belief. I'm an extremely spiritual person. So there's the whole success failure thing. Yeah. And the belief that marriage is once and you make it work. And yes, you're going to have hard times and you're going to have good times, but you work through that together. That was how I was raised. And it's not just how I was raised, it's what I believe. And it's not meant to be easy. It's if you make that commitment, you're to follow through on it. And so I think a whole lot of lessons in that. Yes, you can have that as your foundation. At the same time, if you're at risk and it's not safe for you and your children and you are with a very unhealthy person, at some point you have to say, and it was actually a spiritual leader that led me to this, I have done all I can. And I have to be at peace with that and still be able to move forward and have an amazing life and not beat myself up about that. And so that was a huge journey. To be able to say, it's okay. Like you have followed through your commitment. You can't commit for both of you. You can't do all that. And the most important gift you've been given in all this is 2 children who deserve to have a healthy, happy life.
Yeah, at some point, there comes a point of self-preservation. That if you don't look after yourself, you really can't rely on the world to do it for you. That sounds somewhat cynical coming out of my mouth, but listening to what you just shared with me, Laurie, I'm thinking, gosh, she had her own moment and experience just like your dad did. I got to get out. I got to believe in myself enough to move on and trust that this is the right thing to do, just like in his own way, he did.
And I think at the core of that, and I don't know if he felt that because I've actually never asked him that question, maybe I should, was a huge sense of all of a sudden fear. Fear of, fear for us, and also fear for not providing properly for my children. Because I think as parents, we have this whole perception that I have to stay because that's right for the children. Right? Kids are supposed to have 2 happy parents and a home together. But if that home isn't healthy, then you're actually taking away the gifts that they deserve to have, that you're supposed to protect them with, right? So yeah, there was a lot of lessons in that. I mean, I can remember the moment of sitting there and looking at my daughter Courtney, who's now 20, looking at her face as a baby and thinking, I will do all that I can to protect her from this crazy environment. And I think that was my guiding force for probably the next 5 years.
What was going on professionally at that time?
So professionally, and I think it was that, honestly, that fear that drove me to be number one salesperson in the country. And I could go to work and be Laurie. I could go work with my clients and be me. And I didn't have to worry about all the other stuff that was going on. So for me, it was actually my heart place. It was my safe haven of just living life the way I wanted to live it, because that wasn't what the experience was at home at the time.
Wow, that's interesting. Mm-hmm. So was that wood products? Were you still doing that at that time?
No, by then I was in telecommunications. Okay,
so how did one lead to the other?
Sorry. So things had probably reached a peak, and I realized that I probably couldn't go further in wood products as far as, yes, they finally let a woman come and be a salesperson. They weren't going to be open to advancement as far as maybe management opportunities and things like that. Mm-hmm. So it was just time to take that sales experience and find a sort of moving forward, growing on the edge of expanding type of industry. And telecom was that at the time. So the year I entered was really when competition had opened up within that year. So it was the booming era of telecom.
It seems almost antiquated to think about now, doesn't it? But there was a time.
Because it's gone now.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're back to, really.
I had some news to share with my sisters the other day, just a quick diversion. And I was on the 401 coming out of Toronto, and it was just gridlock. And my mind went to, well, I'll send them an email when I get home. Mm-hmm. But I had the phone hooked up with Bluetooth, and I thought, well, I'm just sitting here. I wonder if I can... Well, one of them's in St. John's in Newfoundland, and the other one is in Inuvik in the Northwest Territories.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so then you get your brain into time zones, and they've got kids, and I've got kids, and it's such an inconvenience. But I'm sitting there still on the 401. I pressed the button, and as it was ringing to call my older sister, who I've texted with and emailed, but I hadn't actually spoken to, I think, since I saw her last summer.
Wow.
As it was ringing and before she picked it up, I remember laughing kind of like this, thinking, oh, I could still just press a button and I could call, and we could talk.
We could talk live.
We can use these phones to actually talk to each other. And Chance goes, oh, hey, Kev. Almost like...
Is everything okay?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But when we're talking about the telecom boom, I mean, that was... long distance plans and just everything. It exploded. And that was what, maybe 20 years or so ago, more or less?
Yeah. So 1996, I started with Sprint. So 20 years ago.
It's funny how things change, but some things that, the need for human connection, and every business needs sales, right? That never go away.
Never go away.
So you're into the telecom industry, and you already told a little bit of that story about the area that you were in at the time of Sprint Canada kind of stalling out. But how did things evolve to get you to eventually to the point where you decided you wanted to go out on your own?
So I worked for Sprint for 10 years, and then as the telecom industry was changing, Rogers came in and purchased Sprint. And so I actually was kept on as one of the only Sprint Canada managers and became the director for all of southwestern Ontario. And then I was with Rogers for a couple of years, and it was a value misalignment. I spent 2 years moving people out of the business. I don't know how many restructurings we went through. I'm all about people, team, synergy, customer experience, and it just wasn't what the industry was about. So Sprint was a small, youthful, innovative, influential, creative, care about your people and customers type of company, which is why they did so well. And then it was this sort of totally different, big corporate, not those values. And so I made a personal decision. I actually was going through another restructuring, and I said I'd like to restructure myself out. And at the time, it was that, or I was next successor to a VP in Toronto. And I also had zero desire to move my family to Toronto. And in that space, I also met my amazing new husband. So, it was just a life choice. And to be quite frank, I'm not some, I had this heart for entrepreneurship or anything. That's not Laurie. I just knew I needed to do something different. And looking back, how crazy is that? Like, what was I thinking? So all of a sudden, I'll just go get another job. So I started looking for other jobs and realized pretty quickly I had a sweet job in southwestern Ontario. There wasn't a lot of those jobs. So
the word "oops" come to mind?
No,
and I'm being facetious a little bit, but
because again, it was just this. Like, I've always had this little, just believe this faith of, you know what, take that step and take that risk, and something will happen. So I spent about 6 months actually just blending our families and focusing on that. And then I thought, wow, I'm just going to start my own business, because what I love is working with teams and working with people and helping drive results. I'll just create that. And so I actually bought a franchise with Brian Tracy.
Neat.
Yep. And trained under him. So I learned about coaching, and I worked with him for a couple of years, and then realized from there that it was time just to do Hawk-inspired, to take some of those principles and create my own thing, which is what I was saying is in the Brian Tracy world, I did nothing with sales.
So you just threw another gigantic Flintstone-sized bone with a ton of meat on it for me to try to digest. I blended families, and then I did a career change, and then I just decided I'd start my own business.
Yeah.
It's just,
no biggie.
Yeah, just checking off the to-do list. That you put that Post-it note in the recycler.
Yeah. If only.
But the idea to, quote, start your own business. Mm. I'm trying to think how to ask it, Laurie, but I'm guessing that decision was a process. Mm. That there might have been, maybe I could do that, but how would I do it? Or what would it be about? Or how am I going to, what was that process like, and the timing involved?
Actually, it's funny when I look back now, because, so this is now 2009. So how many years ago is that now? Almost 9 years ago now? Mm-hmm. 8 years ago now? And so my first step after realizing the job, quote unquote, that I would like doesn't exist in Southwestern Ontario, I'm going to create that job for myself, which I now understand is not a job, it's a business. However, I interviewed a whole bunch of people that were doing what I thought I might want to do. And the reason I say that's so cool is because those now are like my friends and my mentors, and my Greg Schinkel, Allison Graham. Those were some of the people I just interviewed, whoever did this consulting, coaching, training type of thing, and picked their brains about what worked, what didn't, what do I need to know. And they were all so gracious. It was amazing. And so back then I started to create this community around me that would, really help me through the growth of the business. Because those first few years were not easy. I've had the entrepreneurial meltdown in the middle of the living room, rocking back and forth. So, yeah, it wasn't easy.
Yeah, just about anyone that's been through that process has.
Yeah.
Right? There have been some remarkable stories in this podcast. Allison has told many of them in the episode where she joined me. I can't remember exactly what number episode, but if you look for Allison Graham, I mean, there's a reason why she calls herself the resiliency ninja. Mm-hmm. You don't get to be resiliency ninja without having some serious adversity thrown at you, right?
And I think every entrepreneur has those resiliency stories, right? Because you have the dream, you have the thought, you have the idea, and then it's, okay, as you go do it, you hit the universal challenge lines all the time, and you have to decide whether you push through them or you're not supposed to push through them. So
what was the model that you kind of had formulating in your mind at that time you were reaching out to Allison and Greg and some of those others?
So the model was, do I purchase the franchise with Brian Tracy so that I have someone else's content to launch from? and someone else's process, we'll go back to that.
Okay.
Or do I just kind of try to figure this thing out for myself? And again, because I didn't really at the time have that entrepreneurial spirit, I have it now, but I did not have it then. I really was trying to replace a corporate income. That was the driver, and do it in a way that felt authentic versus, running out and getting a job that wouldn't fit. So when your drivers are that, you're looking for something different than today. My drivers are just to really help people uncover their genius, like help people find the core of who they are. I wouldn't have said that when I started the business. So it was really just deciding, does the franchise make sense? Which was the decision I made in the end. And it was the right decision because I learned a lot about the how-to and the process piece, which isn't Laurie. So I kind of learned some systems that would work, and then very quickly realized that it wasn't the message I wanted to deliver in the way that I wanted to deliver it. And that was about a 2.5-year process. So it was great.
There's some interesting things in there to unpack a little bit too. And I want to come back to why Brian Tracy. I'm going to ask for your help to remember to go back there because I want to just explore this other first. That you can't see while you're listening, but Laurie or myself will kind of roll our eyes, or the eyebrows will go up whenever like systems or process comes up.
Yeah.
But somebody in another episode of this podcast, and I wish I could remember exactly where it came up, but they made what I thought was a really good observation about you can be creative and artistic and expressive and all of these kinds of things and be authentic and want to share yourself genuinely with whomever you're coming across. But if you don't have some method or system or discipline process in order to be able to actually take the action to bring that to people and connect and right back to where we started 40 minutes ago, then your gifts never get shared.
100%.
So while we're rolling our eyes a little bit, there needs to be some sort of process at some level in order to create the discipline to take the action to be able to, to get that to the ground, so to speak. Yeah. So it's not that we're saying just be, artistic, and eat all organic root vegetables and live on a cloud. That's all great. But if you want to share that with somebody else, there needs to be some sort of architecture to it that you can have the discipline to follow.
Absolutely. And I think it's one of the biggest mistakes that entrepreneurs make, because most entrepreneurs start with oh my gosh, I have an amazing idea, right? This is going to help people and I can do it, and don't think about the how-to part.
Yeah.
And I mean, one of the greatest books on that is the E-Myth Revisited, and looking at the different aspects of running your business. So you've got the visionary, which is typically your entrepreneur spirit. And then you've got your technician, who's the guy that does the job. And then you've got your manager, who makes sure that the results are on a day-to-day basis happening. And if you don't figure out how to have all three of those happening in your business, which is necessary systems to flow through, then, you can have the greatest idea in the world, but you're not going to have sustainable success.
Tell me about why Brian Tracy now.
I think Brian Tracy, first of all, the focal point coaching model that he had created had great systems and great people.
But how did he even come across your radar screen?
So I was looking to do business coaching. I knew that was sort of the avenue of what I wanted to focus on. And there was a few companies at the time that were selling franchises that were like, here's the system in the box for your success to be a business coach.
Gotcha. And
so it gave you the certification. I mean, Brian Tracy is still to this day one of the leading authorities in business coaching ever. It's antiquated now. Like it's a lot of repetitive sort of simplistic stuff, but it's also timeless in its impact. I think Brian's content, let's call it. So I just wanted to have someone that had that longevity and that experience and that reputation that I could get behind. And it was fabulous. I mean, the training was great. The people were incredible. The learning curve in that first 2 years of how to run a business was exactly what I needed.
What was it about Brian specifically that, well, some of this you already answered, but there, as you noted, there are other choices out there.
Yeah.
But I smiled just thinking about the name, and I haven't been through anywhere near the level that you have. But what was it that made him and his model stick out as the one that kind of connected to you?
Well, at the time, there weren't actually that many models.
Okay.
First of all, today there's bazillion.
They're everywhere,
right?
Yeah.
But going back 8 years ago, there was maybe 3 or 4 that actually had created a coaching program that you could buy this program in a box and be a franchise owner. So there wasn't that many. And of the ones that there were, he was really the only, I mean, let's call it star value, right? Like he was a known, whereas the other ones, you wouldn't have known the owner, let's call it, of who ran the business. So that connection of being able to say, I'm being trained by, I'm working with Brian Tracy, people instantly, there was credibility for me.
Gotcha.
And I didn't have that, right? So I had credibility in the business I came from. Now I was going out and opening all new doors of people I'd never spoken to before. I really, that Brian Tracy piece opened that door versus Laurie Hawkins, who's that?
The reason why I asked that again is that I view that as another potential big leap. You're putting your sort of personal and professional eggs all in that basket going for it. Not that you couldn't have changed directions, but you don't go into something like that half-hearted.
That was
if you want it to work.
And if you look again at timing, right, is you're blending a family, you're kind of you know what it's like when you go through a divorce, you start over financially. Mm-hmm. And I've walked away from my corporate, really lovely, lucrative career and basically took my severance package and invested it in a franchise. So actually right now, if I could talk to my younger self, I would say, are you crazy? Are you crazy? There was nothing that made sense about that decision, to be quite honest, right? Like a logical human being at that point probably would have gone and gotten a job. And then I had this amazing husband who was just like, I think of that too. Not once did he say, are you crazy? He actually said, I trust your decision. We'll make it work.
See, that's a heavy intuition play there.
Oh, wow.
All levels of it.
Huge. We didn't have a nest egg at that point. We'd both been through divorces. So we literally were starting from ground zero and being having that income gone now.
Is your dad still around?
Yeah. We almost lost him a few years ago.
Did you talk to him at that time? Surely you must have.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. My dad is, again, because of his style, he would never say, Laurie, you're crazy. He would just ask questions. Have you thought of this? Have you researched that? Do you have a plan in place? What does that look like? What if? All of those questions, right? But about a year or 2 years later, and things maybe weren't going the way I'd hoped. And I will never forget me saying to him, I'm feeling like a little bit of a failure. And he said, are you kidding? Like, I could not be more proud of you. You've done what I would have loved to have the courage to do. And so that gave me the energy to just keep going.
What are some of the things in that initial time after you bought into the Tracy franchise that you began to learn about yourself that you could see needed to either change or be further developed? Pieces of the entrepreneurial puzzle that might have been missing for Laurie Hawkins.
Well, I think the whole back to the process and systems piece. So as much as I believe a business needs the processes and systems in place to succeed, following a process with a customer that's like structured so heavily that doesn't allow for a flow, because every customer is different. Every experience is different. What they're going through in their business is different. And it literally was like a 12-step. Here's module 1. Here's module 2. Here's module 3. Don't go outside of that. Ask these specific 3 questions. And so I learned a lot about myself as far as I can't do it that way, which was fabulous to learn. Because going into it, I actually thought I needed that and wanted that. But that experience made me realize, no, I need to have something different. I don't want to be a binder on a shelf. That's the line I use all the time since then. I do not want to be someone's binder on a shelf. I want to work with you on your unique issues and challenges and come up with something completely individualized and unique for you and walk the journey.
You needed to see all aspects, including what you didn't want, so that you would know that you wouldn't want it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So how did it evolve then from that time until now?
I would say learning to, again, back to that learning to trust I keep saying is, and I think that that's just something beautiful that happens in your 40s anyways, is really starting to trust your own gifts, starting to know what your own sacred gifts are, and then figuring out how do you build a business around what your gifts are. So there's 50 other people in the London market that do what you do, but they don't do it the way you do it. What's the way you do it that connects in a different way? And go do it. That's it. That's how it's evolved. It's just...
She's just like...
do it.
She's just looking at me without blinking. It's like, I'm just waiting for you to grab the microphone off that stand and then drop it.
Done.
And then that's the end of the conversation. We'll see you next week. No, but it's funny how we make what are fundamentally really simple things very complicated. I'm hands up, the king of complication, paralysis through analysis, thinker, planner, and some of the missing pieces for me is what you just said. Just stop thinking and just go.
Yeah.
You can always tweak for the next call, the next conversation, the next project. But just
do it.
Yeah. And
just
then
take action.
You get that. One of the books I just read recently was The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. And just was, whoa, like just all these little things over and over and over and how you create momentum. But you can't create any momentum by just sitting there thinking about what you might one day want to do.
That's right. Yeah.
So how do you feel now about where you are and what you have created with all the doing in that time since you started your own business?
I'm so grateful for what I have. Like, seriously, I have amazing clients that are long-term clients. I've been with for 3+ years, most of my clients. And I get to do what I love. I get to help people with sales from my perspective, for people to stop being stressed and having anxiety about what sales is. And I get to help people create powerful customer experiences for their customers. And I get to help leadership teams come together so that, you know, the culture in organizations is something people want to come to work to every day instead of lying in bed in the morning and going, oh my gosh, I don't want to go to work. So flipping that and being able to work with clients long-term so that I see that, so that I can look back where they were a few years ago and where they are today and how much the people have changed and embraced being a part of the organization, and the results are there. So it's like this beautiful blend of human connection with results, because I do really love results too. Like, if my clients aren't growing, then I wouldn't feel like I've been doing what I need to do either. So love where my business is at, love where my family's at. You know, I'm just, pinch myself.
What are some of the things that you're doing to deliver on what you just shared in terms of consulting and coaching and speed? Like, I don't know that there's a typical day, but the kind of workflow and the experiences that come from doing what you do, what does that look like?
So I work with my clients. I spend one day a month at their business, and I work on both the sort of personal and professional development piece, so some sort of education, and then the inspiration or psychology piece on an individual basis. So I'll meet with the teams and the leaders, and then I'll meet with the individuals on that same day so that we're working on the team plan and the individual plan so that all comes together. And then I'm available whenever my clients need me throughout the month for things that are going on in the day-to-day business. And then I have other clients I work with once a week in the same capacity. So most of my business is around that, really sort of being entrenched in the business, almost like an outside leader or, you know, part of their leadership team, I would say, as far as growing the business.
You never know who's going to hear these things. And, you know, back to our time traveling reference from before, the neat thing about a podcast like this is we may have somebody pop up years from the time that we're recording this, that it's all about timing and when people find you. I'm curious about, for people that have had the chance to hear your story and say, that's exactly the kind of person that we would like to work with. How much, if at all, is geography a challenge, or any of those kinds of things for people that want to work with you and reach out?
Yeah, no, I work with clients all over North America. So I haven't traveled internationally yet. Very open to that as the kids grow and they're leaving me. So I have more openness to do that type of thing. But just really anyone that's looking to create a more connected culture and drive results, I would love the opportunity to work with.
And I was going to ask you before we wrap up about what are some of the things that maybe you still see as being off in the future, because hopefully health will continue to maintain itself and give you a long runway yet. And now I'm coming back thinking about the hotel / retreat / what else might be in there?
I think more that looking internationally, because as I said, being a mom is really important to me. And we're now entering a phase where the one is off to Ireland in August and to finish her education, and the others will be not far behind, to not requiring as much attention and time from us. And so my husband and I talk often about doing conferences around the world, more speaking engagements internationally than what I do today. And yeah, just looking for, I think there'll be a shift away from, or let's call it in addition to, working more on the entrepreneur space. So today, most of my clients are corporate, and I have this huge passion to sort of take all of these pieces and help entrepreneurs, help the soul-centered entrepreneur to live their dream. And so it's coming. That's going to be coming.
That's neat. I like that idea, the soul-centered entrepreneur, and I think you're uniquely qualified to deliver on that. What comes to mind, a place or two that you've not yet traveled to that you're burning to, that's really on your list?
Oh, wow. Okay, we haven't been to Africa, and that's on the list. I want to sleep on top of one of those Jeeps in a tent in the safari. And where else? Australia. Yeah, Australia, New Zealand.
Well, I think you've got one of my business cards. I'll give you another because I want a postcard when you get there.
Okay.
Because I'm quite sure that it's going to happen and a whole lot more.
Awesome.
So thank you so much for this time, Laurie. It's been an absolute pleasure. I look forward to many more conversations. And who knows, maybe a creative collaboration down the road. You never know.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you. My pleasure.
You can connect with Laurie online at her official website at hawkinspired.com. Hawk like the bird. Hawk inspired. Hawkinspired.com is her official website. You can also look Laurie up on social media. Facebook.com/coach.Laurie Hawkins. On Pinterest, you can find her at pinterest.com/hawkinspired. And the same handle on Twitter, twitter.com/hawkinspired. Give Laurie a shout, and if you are part of a business or an organization and you're looking for somebody to come in and work with your group and give them a soul-centered approach to entrepreneurialism, give Laurie a call, send her a tweet, reach out on Facebook, send her an email through her website. I can absolutely recommend her. She'll do a fabulous job, and I know that she'll be happy to hear from you and that you'll be thrilled that you reached out to her. Now, if you liked Laurie's story, there's some other episodes that I can recommend to you. Doug Vincent in episode 43, some real commonalities with Laurie about travel, family business, human connection, giving, serving, community. I think that you'll really enjoy Doug's stories about his time in Rotary and his travels across the world and helping to be a part of some really worthwhile projects. That's episode 43. Episode 19, Grounded in Gratitude with Carmi Levy. That also came to mind on the lines of human connection. And Carmi tells really an interesting story about the time that he suffered a stroke and lived, and how his life changed after that. There's also a technological aspect to what Carmi does, and how the idea of embracing impermanence and being completely present and grateful are both tied together, not only just in his personality, but in what he does related to technology. That's episode 19. Sarah Westbrook also came to mind as I was listening back to the conversation with Laurie. That's episode 14 on the power of choices. And Sarah, like Laurie, has a strong family connection. And while Laurie's father was such a great mentor to her, Sarah and her mom have an incredible story that continues to have new chapters written as the two of them work together on the incredible work that Sarah is doing empowering young people. So I encourage you to listen to that as well, episode 14. You can find all of those archived episodes on iTunes or at noschedulemanpodcast.com. You can reach me there or at kevinbulmer.com. It takes you to the same place. All my social channel links are up there, as is the sign up for my email list. I hope that you'll join me on this journey, and please do add your voice to mine. Thanks again for spending some time with me. I'm grateful. Thanks for listening. I hope you'll join me next week on the No Schedule Man podcast.
Just a little deja